Hello, viewer. Thank you for joining us. And would you believe it? We finally made it to the end of 1997.
We have. We're only 4 days late, Phil. We're only 4 days late. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to just see if I can turn Tony Harrison up. So it's a bit bright because I seem really dark. And I'm going to change it to cool white. Does that make me look any? I feel really like I'm dark.
You need one of those professional lighting technicians like all the movie stars and pop stars have when they do an interview. They have a
Maybe it's because
technician to light them.
it's winter time and what about all that? Is that better? Maybe because it's winter, Phil, and darkness is rolling in.
You're a bit lit up on the side of your cheek, but
Oh, am I?
it's a bit like
An angel.
something like that.
I'm
So
wearing a hat because I'm having a very bad hair day, so I'm wearing a hat.
I have one of those most days, oddly enough.
I didn't want to say anything, Phil. I didn't want to say anything.
Otherwise known as a no hair day.
Yeah.
So 1997, anyone who watches this channel, and if you are new or relatively new to this channel, thank you for subscribing. We love it when people subscribe and
We
watch.
do. I get a little tingle down where somewhere you can't see.
Yeah, and we're very grateful that you find our ramblings entertaining, amusing, whether you're laughing at us or with us. We don't really mind.
Do you know what my mum
it's all fun.
says?
Yeah.
Do you know what my mum says? This is literally a you'd expect your parents to be very supportive and everything. She said, I love listening to you and Phil. And I'm like, oh, great. Cheers, Mum. She's like, yeah, I put it on when I'm in bed and it sends me to sleep. I'm like, that's not the effect it's supposed to have.
I think it's probably about what I'd expect from listening to me. So we have done several episodes on the year 1997. We have been, of course, this year doing a different year every month, going through that decade and trying to pick our favourite 3 albums of each year. So it's time to find what our favourite 3 are of 97. Ben, do you want to kick it off?
Yes, but I've just got to ask you a question. Are you putting in your 3, the one we mentioned before we came on air?
The one that is by a very, very long-standing and famous band?
Yes.
I'll put it in so that you can have three places, because there's another album by a very talked about band that I think you've kind of got it. It was inevitable you were going to have it in there. So
I'm not predictable.
That gives you 2 spare spaces, and that gives me 2 more. Okay.
Right. I have had a real tough time with 1997 because it's been very difficult to try and balance out a quality album from an album that meant something to me. So I've based this purely on albums that I played a lot of the time and are meant something to me. And if anybody hates them, then I'll give you my mum's address and you can write to her, and maybe those letters will send her to sleep far easier than me and Phil's ramblings. But the ones that didn't make it, they were very, very close to my top 3. There's quite a few, but the 2 that spring to mind, or the couple that spring to mind, was they've gone for my brain. The Supernaturals album. That was a very, very close on my list of ones that we're going to go through. And I and I literally, when I've been driving in my car, I have been debating with myself to whether I'm making the right choice. But the Supernaturals album is a very good album, and it should be listened to by more people. So that one didn't make it. The Fat of the Land, The Prodigy, that could have made it. I really enjoyed it, as I think I called it. It is rock and roll on smack. I really, I like that album. That's a very good album. That almost made it in there. I would like to say OK Computer by Radiohead, but didn't like it at the time because Radiohead were just arty-farty. As I've grown up, I've come to appreciate that album more for what it is. Yola La Tengo, or whatever they were.
Yo La Tengo.
Tengo, yes. They almost made it in. Flaming Pie, Paul McCartney, that was up there. Urban Hymns was up there. And one that was really tearing me apart, whether put it in or not, was the Seahorses Do It Yourself. So they didn't make it. And I feel bad. And I really want to put them in, but I can't. So my first album, Philster, is the Stereophonics Word Gets Around. Because I love that album. I loved it at the time. I still love it now. And it's got some really great tracks on it. From start to finish, it's another one of those albums I can listen. There isn't a bad track on it. So that is my first one through from 1997. Do you want all my three? Do you want me to go through all my three? Or do you want to do it one each?
Let's do it one each, shall we?
Go on then. So Stereophonics, Word Gets Around, South Wales' Finest, a really great album. I think Kelly Jones was at his storytelling best during this album. So that's in there. It had a lot of listening time at the time, and it's going through, Philster.
Well, I'm going to start off with an album that I don't think we even talked about in all those shows that we did when we talked about 1997, which is odd because we both like this album, and I'm obviously not. I'm not going to score any hipster points for this one.
Do you ever get any?
Not often. It has to.
You are like the United Kingdom in Eurovision.
Yeah.
Nil point.
So I'm going for an album that came out in 97. And this is an album that I think at the time it got some fairly good reviews. But since then, it's never really been, I've never really seen it talked about. It's kind of sort of forgotten. And even fans of this band don't often like it.
Yeah.
Partly because maybe it was seen as being an attempt to try and make this band sound a little bit up to date, because the Dust Brothers did some production on this record.
I think I know what's coming.
The people who did the Dust Brothers had worked with Beck the year before.
Yes, yeah.
And that had impressed Mick Jagger, which is why he got them to work on this album. And of course, I'm talking about the Rolling Stones, and it's Bridges to Babylon.
It is Bridges to Babylon. I love this album.
I still think this is a good album. I don't mind the fact that they'd got some production stuff to make them sound a little bit, of the time. I don't think it's bad.
No. And anybody see My Baby? Obviously, that had its songwriting issues because it sounded a little bit like, was it Constant Craving by K.D. Lang?
That's right.
Yeah. And then Saint of Me is a great track. I love Saint of Me.
It's kind of like a Mick Jagger personal manifesto, isn't it?
Yeah. Gunface, that's a great track as well.
Gunface, I really like Gunface. That is one of my all-time favourite. It's actually one of my top 50 tracks of all time by the Stones. Did you know the opening track, Flip the Switch, I believe, has the fastest tempo of any song the Rolling Stones ever did?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It is a good. Yeah. Might as well get Juiced. That's a good one because I like the sort of Mick Jagger vocal on that one.
That was
get Juiced.
That was the Beck style one, really, wasn't it?
That
was when Mick Jagger was into Beck. And then Keith's got some really good sort of slow burn songs on.
He has, yeah.
As well.
Yeah. I think this album was a precursor for what Jagger was going to do with Goddess in a Doorway from 2001. Where he collaborated with Rob Thomas from Matchbox 20, U2, Bono, etc. But I just remember this album kind of getting panned. I know if you have a look on lists of the greatest Rolling Stones albums, it's always in the bottom 4 or 5. But I think, you think about it now, I mean, when they recorded this in 97, how long ago was 97? 20-something years ago, 27 years ago. So Mick Jagger was really only at this time about the same age as what Noel Gallagher is now.
Yeah, he's around, this is it. He was around 50, I think. And
yeah.
I mean, I'm now that age. And of course, at the time, in the
Don't 90s, look it, Phil.
at the time, of course, I thought Mick Jagger was a really old guy, and that they were a really veteran band. And now, of course, I am the age they were then. Maybe that's why I identify with this record. But it's often described as being worse than the album that preceded it, Voodoo Lounge. And I don't really agree. Voodoo Lounge is a very good Rolling Stones album, but it's more like it's designed to sound pretty much like a 70s Rolling Stones album.
Yeah.
And it's quite long and perhaps has a few too many songs on it. I think Bridges to Babylon, although that is still quite a long album, doesn't
62 minutes.
It doesn't seem to have too much stuff on it, in my view. I think it's okay.
Yeah, and I think it's aged really well as well.
I think it has, and I think it's an unfairly ignored or maligned album. So, and I think the Rolling Stones should be represented in our 90s list because they were doing some great big tours in that decade.
They were, yeah. And Anybody See My Baby had Angelina Jolie in the video.
What else could you want? So that's my first choice, Bridges to Babylon of the Rolling Stones. The 60s and the 90s.
Oh, well, my next one up, I'm just going to, because I do know bloody prep, I'm going to bring up my next album just so I know when it was released. It was released September 1997, and I bought the album around that time, and I remember listening to it and didn't sort of pay much mind to it because I had other stuff to be getting on. And then I was working at the firm where me and Philster met all those years ago, back in 96, I believe. End of 90. No, yeah, it would have been 96.
Yeah, kind of like Wootton Garden Fate, but an engineering company.
Yeah. Yes, that basically thing. Yeah. And I remember going on my lunch break, and I wasn't feeling very well. And I remember in my green Ford Fiesta Mark 1, I curled up and I was just drifting off to sleep. And the song Angels came on the live lounge. And I thought, oh, that's a really good song. And I didn't realise that it was Robbie Williams. And I was like, I've got that album. And I just saw it through a completely different lens. And it's called Life Through a Lens. I mean, there's a segue. And it's a good album. I've said it before on this channel that I do like to try a solo album from somebody who's left a band. Obviously, for you guys, I tried the Gary Barlow album. Never going back there, but I've bought the Marcus Mumford album. I have bought, Rob Thomas's solo stuff. So I have, but this is probably the first one, and it's got some great tracks on it. Lazy Days, Old Before I Die, South of the Border, which is very Oasis-y. Obviously, Angels blew up because I think it only went into the charts at something like in the mid 90s, sort of, whenever it was.
Did you just mention Old Before I Die?
Yeah.
Isn't that the one that sounds a little bit Liam?
Yes, that one's, yeah. I'll pie my before I die. Yeah, that one, yeah.
He was definitely trying to be like that, wasn't he, I think?
Yeah, because I think when it came out, I think it didn't even break the top 10 in the album charts. And then I remember it dropping down, and it didn't actually go to number 1 in the album charts till about 6-7 months after it had been released. And then it just, obviously his career snowballed from then. So, but he does write him and Guy Chambers write a very good, in like pop rock sort of catchy melodies. And I did buy Robbie Williams' single Freedom when that got released as well. That's how much dedication I put into a would-be former boy band member, solo artist sort of stuff. And then I went and saw him. It wasn't this tour, it was the following album. But I just think, it might not have been the best album of 1997, but it's one that I listened to a lot. It's one that had a sort of, it always got a place for me, I think. And I know that's,
it certainly set him up as the king of mainstream pop in the UK for a few years. So
yeah,
there you go.
It's like I said on that short video. I have listened to Gary Barlow's debut album, which is like listening to Boys to Men without any of the gumph, and you can see why he won that battle. If there was a battle, I know the only people who made probably any sort of money, real decent money at the time out of it was the record company. But I think you can see why it was it catchy pop, isn't it? It's catchy pop. It's not that complicated, and it's fairly painless on your ears.
And it's all over the radio. So there we are. That was Robbie.
That was Robbie. Controversial choice, some may say, but some might say. But yeah, it's in there. Over the Prodigy, Fat of the Land, and Seahorses. What have I done? Oh God, Phil, what have I done?
Now I'm trying to be hip, Ben, with my next choice, but
you're going to fail miserably.
I'm going to fail miserably because my first choice, obviously, I had some crusty old '60s legends with an album made in the '90s. So I've got a battle here between two crusty '60s legends. It's going to be. Ooh. Is it going to be Paul McCartney with Flaming Pie? Now that was a good album.
That was a very good album.
There's a lot of very good songs. I enjoy that album. I still like it now, and as you know, I do like Macca anyway. I like Macca's optimism and positivity in his music. But what I do think about Flaming Pie, even though I do like it, it's a teeny bit. The only thing I could criticize about it's a teeny bit disjointed because I think it's kind of like 2 or 3 different projects put together
in one. Yeah.
Because there's stuff produced by Steve Miller and there's stuff he did with George Martin and
and
stuff he did with Jeff Lynne. So, but it's all good songs. But I'm going to go for one that is more of a coherent album and an album that goes a bit deeper emotionally. Ooh. And I did listen to this more in '97, and I actually got quite enthused about this album coming out in September of '97. In fact, I even phoned a phone line. I think I ordered it on the bizarre. I ordered it on the phone. Can you believe that? That you phoned up
phone line, 50p a minute, one Philster,
and you could
bring a pack of wet wipes.
Yeah, you could hear a sample of the album on the phone.
They were the days.
But this was quite a big deal because I got into this artist in the early '90s, and he hadn't made an album of new songs since 1990. So it was like a 7-year hiatus that he had from writing new songs.
Is it? Can I guess? Is his first name 3 letters long?
His first name is 3 letters long.
I'm good at this, aren't
I? Spelt B-O-B.
That's it.
Or it could be B-A-A-B if you want to pronounce it Barb. But we are talking we are talking about Bob Dylan. Now, this is Time Out of Mind.
It is.
Which at the time got very good reviews because it was like Bob's back, and so I think it was.
I remember you buying it. I remember having the discussion with you when you bought it. Didn't you go see him on the tour? Didn't you go and see that?
Not that tour. I didn't see him until about 3 years later. But he did do some songs from that, I think. But yeah, this is an album that is quite a long. It's
on my want list. Look at it. It's on my want list there.
It's quite a long album. I think it's over 70 minutes long, and it concludes with a song called Highlands, which goes on for about is it 16 minutes or 14 minutes? At least 14 minutes, which is a narrative song about Bob wandering around, going into a cafe and various things, which a song that some Bob Dylan fans actually don't like, but I do like. So I'm kind of, how some Rolling Stones fans don't like the Bridges to Babylon album, but I do like it. And some of these Dylan fans don't like this long song at the end of this album, but I do like it.
16 minutes and 31 seconds.
That's it, 16 minutes, 30 seconds. That's Highlands. But it's one of those albums. There's a few bluesy songs on it. It's produced by Daniel Lanois. It's got that sort of late night feel to it. The songs sound like they could have been written 50 years earlier. They could have been written 50 years earlier. They are
always quite like that cover of it.
Quite timeless.
There you go.
So yeah, just one of those albums that's quite a moody album to put on, and you can sort of get yourself lost in it. But I did love it at the time, still like it now. So I'm sticking it on there. We've got to have some crusty legends represented.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, hip 90s kids, but Bob Dylan is there with Time Out of Mind.
Yeah, well, we're down to my final one. What can it be? Did you like? I thought I'd throw that in. That's a bit of acting on my part there, Phil. See, did you like that? That's
well,
sort of.
I pretty much I can guess. This band, of course, have still got. They're still attracting youngsters.
They
who don't remember them at the time.
But those youngsters are probably calling them crusty 90s rockers.
Well, possibly. But you were there then.
I was there then. Then I was, but now I'm here, and to be here now is where I am here now. Then
talking of albums that go on for more than
100 years. I think the 100 Years War, I think, started and finished before this album did. So it is Be Here Now. Yes, I am predictable. I'm a man. I'm shallow. I'll put my hands up to that one. I have very limited musical taste. It's literally, I come home, I put on a pair of slippers, walk into my living room, and I put Oasis on. That's all I ever listen to, because everything else is rubbish.
Well, as you know, I was kind of in on Oasis from the start of their recording career, and I really liked the first two albums, and and the B-sides, and when this came out, I just remember it was great to have some new Oasis songs, because they had been played. All the other ones had been played quite a lot, really.
Yeah.
So I remember the newness of it. I remember.
Yes, I remember all the hype. I remember being like a kid at Christmas, because all I was doing was waiting for it to come out. And I think I said on one of the previous shows, the time between Morning Glory and Be Here Now was less than 2 years. I think Morning Glory came out October 95. Be Here Now came out August 97. But it just seemed to take an age. The build-up. I remember, like in the spring, the newspapers were releasing, like you could send off and get a Be Here Now poster, and
it
was around it.
It was the longest wait for new songs from them, because I think the last time you'd had a new Oasis song, if I got this right,
I'll be able to tell you,
February of '96,
when the B-sides for Don't Look Back in Anger came out. Yes, that would have been. So because some might say roll with it. Yeah, so that would have been around February '96. So that would have been the last time. Yeah, because '97. This is before the master plan. There wasn't any new stuff on the master plan anyway.
Yeah,
but I know in
that fast-moving Britpop era, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
It was by far the longest wait for any new Oasis songs since they
it was.
come along. Yeah. So it did at the time feel like a long time.
Yeah, and I have never been one of those people. I know what its faults are. I know that some of it goes on too long. I'm not a massive fan of All Around the World. I think that's the baggy song for me. That's the one that sounds. It just goes on too long. If they'd reduce that down to about 4.5 minutes, I think the album would have been. But I've never lost any love for it. I love The Girl in the Dirty Shirt. I think that is very similar to On Dig Out Your Soul and High Horse Lady. That sort of, I quite like the sort of feel and tempo of that. I love My Big Mouth, and I just, I just think it's a good album. Fading Out, and you know this first because I've said this since time began, is I know it's Oasis going a little bit Bon Jovi, but that Primal Scream thing that Liam does halfway through, I think, is great. I think Liam's voice is
the Bon Jovi.
What else can I say, son?
Yes, it does. I suppose it does sound a little bit like Liam's a cowboy on a steel horse he rides.
Right,
It's similar to that, isn't there?
Yes, it is their Bon Jovi moment.
Slide guitar. Hasn't that got Johnny Depp playing slide
guitar? Yeah. But I really like, what's the obviously it's got my big mouth. What's the Magic Pie? I
don't mind. I quite like that.
I really like that track as well. I quite sort of enjoy this because it's not. I think only Oasis at that time would have got away with doing a track like that, because it is slightly quirky in a way.
It is a bit like a whimsical 60s psychedelic song.
It
doesn't really make any sense, but I thought it was fine at the time, and I think the live versions of that are very, very good.
Yes, I think it's because isn't it about Tony Blair, isn't it? That's what he sort of says that it was about. It was about Tony Blair or something like that. But I love Magic Pie. Stand By Me, I think got overplayed, but even like I Hope I Think I Know I just think all the songs are really up tempo. Don't Go Away is obviously a great ballad. And then I love the sort of It's Getting Better Man.
Yes, that is
a stomper.
That does get overlooked, doesn't it, that one?
Yeah. I think that's a really sort of, I think it's a really good feel-good album. I think if you pull it on, it's not as bad as what people, I think it got, I think Chris Evans started the sort of, I think the problem with the album is the critics sort of, when Morning Glory came out, slightly panned it and said Oasis were ready for Pipe and Slippers and it wasn't definitely Maybe and all this sort of stuff.
They didn't want to get it wrong again, so
they didn't want to get it wrong again.
They overhyped it and raved about it.
They massively overhyped it, gave it 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5. It's a solid 7 out of 10 album. I personally think it's 7 out of 10. It's a 3.5, 4 out of 5. And I think if you sort of step back and, I mean, obviously kids today, they're not, but we lived through it at the time. If you remove that hype and just take it for what it is, it's actually a very good album, and it is of its time. It hasn't it's dated well, but it is quite clearly a band who were living that lifestyle, exuberance, and cocaine was a factor in the sort of overblownness of it. But I like that about it. I like the fact that it is slightly overblown. Yeah, I know all around the world sort of annoys me at times, but I love that sort of, it sums up that period of time of the 90s where everything was just like, yeah,
all around the world. It did go on a bit long, and he kind of tried to make it too much into the Hey Jude, didn't he, really, at the end with the
yeah. I mean, that song had been around since 91, 92, and I know they thought about recording it. Well, it wouldn't have fitted on Definitely Maybe, but I know they looked, but he wanted a 40-piece orchestra. But yeah, it does try. Yeah, it goes on too long, and even the video's rubbish. Whether in those white suits, they just look like, So, but that aside, all around the world aside, because it goes on for 9 minutes and 20 seconds, and was a single as well, which,
was it cut down for a single?
I'm not overly sure. Shall I have a look? Shall I have a look? Let's have a look. All around. I could just go and get it, I suppose. All around the world. There we go. Because it came with CD single. Because it had the Fame flashbacks. I love the Fame and flashbacks. And it had the cover of Street Fighting Man on it. But it was cut down to 9 minutes and 38 seconds.
Cut down?
Which I don't think is being cut down, because I think, let's have a look at the album version. The album version it was actually increased by 18 seconds for the single.
No way.
The album mix is 9 minutes 20. The single mix is 9 minutes 38.
Is that because, I can't remember which way they come now.
Has it got a longer fade out on it?
Does It's Getting Better Man come in after that?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
So
maybe it's the fade over.
Crossfade? Don't they?
Yes, they do.
Together?
Yeah.
So basically, the one on the single has got no crossfade, and they let it.
Yeah, because it has that little jumbly mix, doesn't it? Right, as it's crossfading in.
Yeah.
So, and then just to irk me a little bit more, the All Round the World reprise is 2 minutes and 8 seconds.
Yeah, that's kind of a bit of a naff. I found that a bit naff.
Yeah.
Because it was they were trying to be like, sound a bit like Penny Lane or something.
Yeah,
it's a little bit Beatley. There's a couple of things where they're trying a little bit too hard to be Beatley, maybe.
Yeah. I will say, and this may be controversial, that there is not a single Oasis song that I hate or dislike. But if I was to rank my Oasis songs worst to best, All Round the World would probably be my least favourite.
That's interesting. Yeah. There you go. And like most Oasis albums, certainly in the first few, there are some B-sides that went with that project that arguably you can make the case it should have been on the album, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there we go. That is my final choice, a predictable choice. And let's face it, people, it's not as though I didn't warn you it was going in. So there.
So after the Rolling Stones and Bob Dylan, do you think I need to have a cool, an album that was really more of the 90s generation?
Are you going for Robert Johnson? Mozart?
This is really hard because you're
torn, aren't you?
I am a bit torn on this. There's that American band, the Jayhawks. I really like their album Sound of Lies from 97. But then I'm thinking the other album that impressed me.
Is it Scottish?
Is Scottish. And I do think that this band, for me anyway, are one of the best indie bands of all time because they've been quite creative, and I do think their music's pretty cool. Even though I don't actually I don't really like the lead singer that much.
To be fair, I prefer his twin brother. Out of the Proclaimers, it's the other guy I like.
I'm not really as much of a fan of him as I am
Marty Pellow?
As I have of other lead singers of bands that I like. But but it's Bobby Gillespie. What can I say? It's Primal Scream.
Oh.
And it's Vanishing Point.
Good album.
I just think it was so groovy. And I do think it's a little bit unheralded from 97.
Yeah.
And I know there's many other albums that I could have had in this, even my personal favorite 3. And there's many others that should be on an objective list of the best 3 albums of 97. There simply isn't room for them all.
There isn't room for them all.
The great thing is we can listen to all of them.
Well, we're going to have to listen to all of them because we're going to have to fight them against each other. We all know Betty Boo's going to win or MC Hammer, so why don't we just end this pain now, Phil?
So that means that Britpop's nearly over, isn't it?
It is nearly over.
Next year is 1998.
This is hardcore.
That's the year of the big come down.
But
would it be a letdown?
Well, it's also the year the New Radicals came out.
And which album's going to win the showdown? I thought that was 99.
No, the single came out in 99. The album was released at the end of 98, Philster. And that means, finally, you're going to have to listen to it.
I get what I give.
You do indeed.
Or in this case, I get what you give. So
that sounds wrong.
Yeah, it does sound quite wrong. So that's it, viewers. Where did we get it wrong? I don't think you probably need to think too much about that. Just tell us which albums we should have chosen in outraged fashion before you storm off and block us. Never to watch us again. But
Lauryn Hill should have been in there. Well, she might well have been, but she didn't get picked because she turns up late to gigs.
Isn't she next week though? Next year?
I thought it was 97.
I think the Lauryn Hill Miseducation was 98.
Wow.
Contender. Yeah.
Was it? We're there. Law. We were closing off the show, and now we've had to go back. We got to re-close off. Lauryn Hill. Oh no, that's a different Lauryn Hill. What? Once? Oh no, what have I done it? Right. Lauryn Hill. Lauryn Hill, artist. There she is. No. Why don't I just not do it in Discogs and go into the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill? Right. It came out. Oh, please let me be right. Anyway, that's the end of the show, everybody. We'll catch you next time.
Join us next time. We will be soon discussing 1998, including the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. Thanks for watching. All the best.